Is an expense scandal still a scandal when it's the Liberals that are responsible for it and not the Conservatives? That's a question the mainstream media will have to answer with documents I've obtained under the Access to Information Act regarding a very inflated expense account that seemed to happen in a trip to New York City made by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and members of his government back in March of this year to visit the United Nations. Now, this was the trip which had the climax of Trudeau announcing that Canada would be seeking a seat on the UN Security Council by 2020-2021. This is, of course, meant to rebuild and restore Canada's reputation in the world because, you know what, getting in bed with the United Nations is apparently the way to do that under Trudeau's government. But this was not an inexpensive trip. In addition to the normal costs of travel, hotel, meetings, etc., and the huge staff team that was there, ranging right up to Trudeau's principal secretary and his chief of staff, this was actually a trip that had a great many expenses, especially with travel and accommodations. New York City, not an inexpensive place, but it is apparently not an inexpensive place to get around. I've got documents obtained under the Access to Information showing how much just went into that, especially with travel expenses. You see, even before the trip actually started, the government was racking up huge bills with ground transportation companies. For example, on March 10th, the government spent $700 for 2 SUV drivers to ferry people around the city for advance purposes. On March 11th, they spent about $1,000 for the same service. On March 14th, they had about $830 plus another cost that has been redacted based on, again, the same sort of car service arrangement here. And then when everyone started showing up for the conference, when we're getting into March 16th, March 17th, as you see from looking at the receipts here, government is spending somewhere in the range of $1,400 per car. $1,402.50 for a cargo van. That was the same day they spent for a Sprinter van, $1,312, and yet another one, $1,357.25. The minister had a driver which billed $465.75, and another SUV driver that same day, $517. And oh yeah, that was just for one day, and that was a cheaper day. On March 17th, the SUVs were coming in at $740 apiece. So this government was spending thousands of dollars a day just even getting people around in New York City instead of asking people to come to them or perhaps having a bit of a pared down trip. And obviously expenses, sometimes you get these big, huge $1,000 expenses. Sometimes it's the little ones. Remember a few years ago, Bev Otis had the orange juice glass heard around the world. $16 spent in London, England for a glass of orange juice. Well, a staff member of our international trade minister now spent $17.77 at Jamba Juice. Now, I don't know if they just ordered a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice or something else, but $17 at Jamba Juice, is that a scandal when it's a Liberal government that's responsible for that expense? And people will say, oh, well, hang on, Bev Otis' controversy was not just about the orange juice, it was also about the SUVs. It was about her limousines. Well, she was spending $1,000 a day, which seems to be the going rate for what our current minister, Marie-Claude, is having the government spend to get her around town when she's traveling, supposedly representing the best interests of Canadians. And then we can look at some other expenses here, some other line items. Obviously, when you're sending a delegation to New York City, to the United Nations, you want to have meetings, and the government did that. But when you go to a meeting, what do you look at? Do you go? Do you look around? Do you scan the room? Apparently, our government thought it made sense to spend a little over $300 on a flower arrangement for the room. Because after all, if you can't wow people on your foreign policy, at least you can have some nice calla lilies in the center of the table, right? Canadians don't care about these theatrics. Canadians don't care about the optics. Canadians want government to represent them. And so far, I'm not seeing we got much of a return on the investment at the UN. Just a bill. For TheRebel.media, I'm Andrew Lawton.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of The Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.